Rebecca Cingolani is a wife, a mom, an entrepreneur, and a former business analyst. Now she wants to be the next state representative for South Carolina House District 110, which covers parts of Mount Pleasant and downtown Charleston. I sit down exclusively with Rebecca for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on social media. Rebecca Cingolani, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Obviously, you are a mom,
Yes.
you are a wife, you are an entrepreneur, you're a former business analyst, you're from California, you just moved to Charleston recently. And now I understand, too, you also are a Democratic candidate for South Carolina House District 110.
Yes.
Which covers really here downtown Charleston and obviously parts of Mount Pleasant. What got you from being a mom, a wife, a business analyst, and an entrepreneur to say, hey, I want to be the next state representative?
Yeah, well, I think it was a lifelong thing. I didn't know I was going to be here until I got here, of course.
Wow.
But along the way, I saw a lot of things that I couldn't ignore. My 21st birthday was on 9/11, and I grew up in Illinois.
Yes.
And then on my 2 days before my 21st birthday, I moved to California to go to school. And so that was a life-changing experience all on its own, to be by myself. I had no family there.
Wow.
And to start my adult life essentially in that regard.
Sure.
And I was really jaded by how that happened, everything that happened after it. I saw things in our government that I thought were going to change as a result of having us being shown that there's cracks there, kind of not so dissimilar to what we're experiencing now with COVID. So you see how the system's working, we see how it works beautifully, we see where we can make changes and where we need to, do things in order for, if something like this happens again, or even 6 months from now, how are we going to handle it? And I'm hoping that we're going to do things that really help make these transitions, these big transitions, smooth, because I really felt like we could have done a lot more then. And I kept waiting and kept thinking, okay, the adults, they're supposed to know what they're doing. I kept waiting, and then 20 years later, I still didn't see the changes that I had expected as a young adult. And so now I'm an adult, right? A real bona fide adult, and I can't ignore the things that I wish that were different.
As a matter of fact, I went on your website just this morning, and it reads this quote: with this candidate, you're getting a fresh, wholesome perspective. What is your perspective, Rebecca, about House District 110?
Well, I think that it's at a pivotal moment because we have so much growth in this area, and especially living in a place like California for so long and seeing how much people come in there and how they have to make laws in order to make it safe. Right? And so all of those laws come together to form something that doesn't feel like home anymore. It feels like you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. You feel like you start to restrict your freedom. And I see a place like Charleston and all of its loveliness, and there's a part of me that really would like to be able to preserve the loveliness of it by carefully planning for the future of the area. And so it's not that I don't believe in progress. I definitely believe in progress and change, but it's got to be in a way that we're not stepping on our own feet, so to speak. We want that to be beneficial 100 years from now.
And I'm going to get to some of those issues in just a minute.
Yes.
But also on your website it reads this: Rebecca's a mother, a wife, and a career-oriented professional with a diverse background in corporate and worldly ventures. Having a broad spectrum of experience, Rebecca delivers constructive value to the small business landscape and is well versed in the benefits of corporate changes within the state and the implications to the area in which she resides. What is the state of small businesses right now in House District 110 when you combine obviously coronavirus?
It's a case-by-case scenario. Some people have handled it brilliantly, and others have kind of gone underground. Some businesses are even closing. But I think it ties into the word wholesome, and that being that it's a whole. Where I look at it from the whole, and it's not just small businesses, it's not just school, it's not just criminal justice reform. It's got to be something that's packaged together in a whole system so that it supports small businesses. You can't just address small businesses. You can't just address schools. It's got to be that the school is supporting the growth and the education in order for people who want to have small businesses to come out of there, that know what they're doing, that have planned for, that have a year's reserves, 6 months reserves. Most businesses at this point never had an emergency plan, and so that becomes an issue, and that is something greater. There's something greater behind that than just the small business.
Well then, if you were a state representative today, what emergency plan would you have in place for those small business owners, say right here on King Street?
Right, I know. Well, it looks like the beauty about this is that I don't think King Street's going to be the same after this. Do you? I mean, I don't. I think that the way that businesses function are already changing, that you can't really know what it's going to look like 6 months from now. But what you have to do is be able to give people the tools to be able to change in a way that allows the flexibility for them to progress dynamically. Let me just say it that way.
Okay.
I could say that this is what I think is good for the state of small businesses now. That might not be true too much from now, so I don't want to, and every business is different.
Okay.
But you can't expect small businesses to all be the same, but you can't expect all businesses to come together and decide that one thing's good for everyone. Do you know what I mean? You have to be able to make it tiered for everyone to do what is good for them, allowing for that most amount of freedom within that system.
And if you were in the State House today, and obviously they went back just last week to pass a couple of bills,
yes.
Which bill would you sponsor or co-sponsor as a state representative to help those businesses on King Street?
That's a good question. I can't say that I know the answer to that because I haven't read all of those bills. But I will say that I think there's some important things that are happening right now, especially with the solar industry. I don't know how much you know about that, but they're trying to pass a couple of things that'll help the solar industry come into about 2 to 5% of our power here in South Carolina, and so they're kind of laying the groundwork for that right now. So that would be wonderful, because since we're about to close the session, that it would be next year that those things could get passed.
If you were there today, how would you, as a state representative, deal with Santee Cooper to make certain that the customers in 110 get their money's worth?
Yeah, right. I know it's more complicated. It's more complicated than I think people realize. It's easy to sit in this position and say that you know the answers and this is what you're going to do when you get there. But the real fact is that there are so many things that are happening behind the scenes until you're there. I don't think that you really know what you're going to do. You can say you're going to do something, right? It's easy to say you're going to do this, this, and this. But until you see it all together, because one bill plays off the next bill, plays off the next bill, and they all interact. That's what I mean about the wholesome part of it, is until you really get a grasp of what's going on in all of those, and you assess, all right, you're moving this and then this and then this and this, and that was what makes a smooth path, right? And so you don't really know until you get there and you look at it from all angles. And so that's it's not that I don't want to answer your answer honestly, but that is the honest answer, is that until you get there and see what all those behind the scenes players are doing, you don't really know what the honest truth is what I feel like.
If you were a state representative today, what truth do you want from those Santee Cooper folks?
I don't think you're actually really going to get to know the truth in that respect. I think what you know is what else can we bring to the state that allows it to be not a monopoly. And it doesn't have to be something so dramatic as 30% energy somewhere else, but just to make it so that there's other forms and other ways that we can produce energy more efficiently. And so that allows for a little bit more creative thinking.
What would be your creative thinking when it comes to power and really conserving power in the state of South Carolina?
It's a great question. I think if we're talking the ideal world, I would think that eventually making it so that each home could be self-sufficient. I'm not talking this year or next year,
Okay.
5 years from now, but starting to think about 20 years from now. How self-sufficient can every building be? How much power can we bring in on our own? And then what we can't bring in, it should make sense for the environment. It should make sense for our economy, because that's important too. And so we have wind and solar and other ways that we can go about producing energy. But we need to make sure that the same thing doesn't happen. So that's happening now, right? So we have to plan for those changes appropriately and have somebody overseeing them that's going to be neutral.
And you also said this too on your website. Sorry about the bugs. You said this quote: "She understands with an elevated level of compassion all sides of the issue and focuses on solutions that easily integrate, obviously, into our communities with lasting benefit for generations to come." What issues do you have compassion for when it comes to 110? And obviously, what solutions from your background would you use to solve those?
Sometimes I kind of think it's annoying for people to hear that I'm from California or I lived there for so long, because I know how people feel about this area and California. So I've had people actually say not to mention it. And I cannot mention it because I feel like if you're going to get the authentic version of me, you have to know that about me. But those experiences from being there,
Right.
that I learned so much that is happening here in the Low Country that California has been through, and I've seen how they've handled it, and sometimes they handle it well, and other times I feel like they could have done better. And so just from those scenarios, will you ask me the question again, because I want to make sure that I answer it for you.
Oh yeah, let me go back and reread
Yeah.
what you said on your website.
Yes.
Quote: "She understands with an elevated level of compassion all sides of an issue and focuses on solutions that easily integrate into our communities with lasting benefit for generations to come." So what are those issues that you have compassion for when it comes to House District 110?
I tend not to be an issue person,
Okay.
because it's not that I don't think that issues are important, but taking it from a holistic approach, I feel like if we just piecemeal problems, then we will never come up with solutions that are lasting, that we have to take it as a whole in order to address it all together to have it move forward in a cohesive way. So piecemealing is not an option for me. But with the question from compassion from all sides, it's that I can see every perspective, no matter how aggressive or off in the weeds it is, and I can see, yes, that is valid. If everybody's opinion has to be valid, that's just kind of how the world works, otherwise it wouldn't exist, right? So how do you take all of those valid perspectives, even if I don't agree with them or like them, they're still valid because they exist. And so how do you take that and translate it to what they're actually desiring, right? And that is a community that's safe, that you want your family to live in, that's thriving. I think we can all agree those are things that we want, right? And trying to figure out what that is for each little area. Because, with the district that I have, what's good for downtown isn't necessarily what's good for over there by Patriots Point. So, it's trying to figure out, I know that we're being, at some point that's going to be redistricted.
Right.
So hopefully those sort of things will be addressed. But in the interim, figuring out taking all of those opinions and cohesively molding that into a plan by just threading, just taking little threads to try to find the best place. And it's the same, that is how I would look at it from the holistic perspective, right? You have to take a little bit from everywhere, even if it's not something that you agree with. I'm not going to agree with everyone in my district, right? And so it's being willing to do that, because I think people get stuck on, they believe that their opinion is right. Yes, and their way is right, but what's good today is not necessarily going to be what's good a couple years from now. And so it's also adding that foresight, seeing what's coming ahead and being on top of it, and so we're not behind.
And you also said this too, actually, on your website, quote, "I am passionate about thriving business and streamlining systems.
Yeah.
By creatively expanding our economic ties, we can generate healthy wages and prosperous job opportunities, closing many of those social gaps." How many jobs do you hope to bring back to 110 if you're elected? These bugs are awful. Sorry, folks.
I don't know if I have a job number. What I would say is that I would like to bring more quality jobs.
Okay.
As being somebody who's coming from a different place, which increasingly there's more of us moving to Charleston, correct? And I think we're all seeking to have something, maybe not exactly like where we came from, but we want to be able to provide for ourselves, right? And as being one of those transplants, I've felt the lack of paths in order to get where it is that I wanted to go. And so it's not because I'm not educated, right? And it's not because I don't have skill sets. It's just I now can empathize with that experience. And so I don't know if it's about job number necessarily, it's about the quality of jobs and making sure that those jobs are fitting in with what it is that we're trying to accomplish, or what it is that I would be trying to accomplish, which would be, if it's a holistic approach, it would be good for the environment, right? So bringing jobs in that are conscious about how it is that we're treating our environment, but also paying at a living wage, and looking at people like teachers who are clearly not making enough to live in our district, and finding out solutions for them in order to be able to live here, right? So I think if they're teaching here and they're teaching our children, that they should be able to live here, afford to live here. So there's in Santa Barbara, for instance, they have a plan that when you build, and I won't necessarily have the power to do this particular, because it's more of from a city issue than it is. But there, what they do is, if you build 10 unit housing units, one of them or two of them go to low income or just living wage people. So they allocate a certain amount. And so if you were doing that, but you were doing it in a particular way for teachers or people who are important, that we're saying are important to our community, that we want in our community, right? I think then, that's just one thing we could do out of many things we can do.
You talk about housing. What is it, Rebecca? Is it affordable housing? Is it attainable housing? Or is it workforce housing in your mind?
I would say you have to have a little bit of everything. To make it a robust system, you have to have a lot of different avenues, because if one area doesn't start to work, you can refocus. And so that is a part of that flexibility of keeping a whole approach, is having a lot of different avenues to take that. So as the community is growing, we may find that this approach is better, and so then we can start to change that. But if we don't have the avenue already in place, then it's harder to get there later on.
What avenue would you have in place for affordable housing in your district?
Say that again?
What avenue would you take as far as affordable housing for your district?
Well, on some level, that is the city.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? I don't know that I would necessarily have the authority for that. But anything that would support, if something came up in the House that would support that affordable housing in a cohesive way of taking care of our constituents, I would definitely vote for it. I think another way to approach it is just having some sort of transit system to move people as well. Do you know what I mean?
What is the state of public transportation in this district?
Well, we definitely could use a lot more. I would love water taxis.
Okay.
I would love water taxis. And anything, a train, some sort of train. You could do electric train.
Okay.
I mean, you have a lot of, there's things that you have to really think about because of the bridges.
Oh, yes.
That makes it a challenge to move people around a little bit more. So it's not just something that you're planning for to start next year, right?
And speaking of next year, really quickly, let's talk about more about education. Obviously I've talked to a lot of candidates who are running for office in the primary here, and a lot of them talk about teachers' bill of rights and paying teachers more. What should be in the teachers' bill of rights, and how much will you be willing to pay more for the teachers in your district?
I think the teachers should make a lot more. I don't think that there's anyone who wouldn't agree with that. The question is just, how do you get there, right? I know that it is something I'm really passionate about, and I don't think that there is a solution that I can see that fixes all the problems, because I think it's a paradigm shift in how we teach our children that has to happen. The system that we use right now is like 75 years old. We've taken out some of the most important things, this is not across the board because it's not in every school.
Okay.
But how much attention we're paying on physical movement, that is going down. It's arts, anything that has to do with anything creative, that is the first thing to go. Music, anything musical, So as we can bring those things back in, it's something that teachers are going to have to decide. The educators, they're so busy working on paperwork, and they're not focused on, they don't have that hour. If we could give teachers just an hour out of their day to say, please dream of what your perfect classroom would look like, what they could come up with, and how that would shift the way that we teach. And everyone is talking about large class sizes, but I think if we were to shift the way we teach, the large class sizes might not be an issue because of the way that we're approaching. It's not just a teacher at the front of the desk and a blackboard, you know what I mean? You could have small groups and interactive learning happening, and it would look totally different than the way that we're teaching now. I mean, Montessori's doing a pretty good job with that, so, but I think we even need to take it one step further. This is the issue though, and I'm finding this as I'm contacting teachers.
Okay.
I'm just gonna let that as I'm connecting with teachers, and I'm not getting a whole lot of answers from them about what it is that they need. I know that what they're asking for is minimal, and I kind of feel like they should be asking for a lot more. The next question is, once we make all these changes, and if we could decide on what those changes would be, how do we pay for it, right? And so part of getting in there is figuring out where the waste is happening and taking that, at the same time bringing in more business, more revenue, and before it gets here, having a plan on how to spend it. We also have according to the teachers, there's a $26 billion deficit in the retirement fund. And so that's a big deal. That's not a small number. And so they want to know from people like me, how it is that we're going to close that gap for them. And that's a very good question.
How do you?
I don't know exactly, because I don't think that I could give you all these perfect answers. But I think until you get there, and until you start swimming around in those numbers and seeing where it's going and how it's being spent, that we don't really know. And so it's really about somebody willing to dive in.
What's your dream for teachers' pay and the Teachers' Bill of Rights?
I take that question, and what it is that I dream for teachers is for them to wake up excited about the day, inspired to teach our children, because if our teachers aren't feeling inspired every day, how are our children going to feel inspired? And then what do those children grow up to do when they're older? And they end up being motivated by things, motivated by earning a living, motivated by finding themselves shelter and having their own family, instead of being inspired to become what it is that they're desiring and to impact the world.
June 9th. Why should people vote for you?
Well, June 9th they don't have to now. My candidate that I was running against, she dropped out.
Slater.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. So it's a refocusing for me.
Okay.
So November 9th,
Right.
or is it the 9th? I think it's the 9th. Might be the 8th. Whatever it is, in November, why should they vote for me? They should vote for me, one, because you'll never find a more honest candidate, somebody that's as hardworking as me and willing to just get in there and look for creative solutions, and not only find the creative solutions, but find the right timing to make it happen.
Rebecca Cingolani, thank you so much for your time, Rebecca Cingolani, and welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cingolani.
Oh, okay. I'm bad with pronunciations. Cingolani. Thank you.
Yes.